So when we took a look at communities, there were a bunch of different kinds of communities that we could have looked at, but the place that frankly was getting our attention because we're a commercial company was what was happening in commercial enterprise communities, because frankly a lot of the stuff that's happening there really does bleed down to more kind of consumer or neighborhood kind of communities as well. So we looked at some of the best Drupal community sites we could find, and the first one was Semantic. Semantic has got a terrific site for supporting their customers. You may know of Semantic as the company who makes antivirus products for Windows machines, but frankly, the bulk of their business comes from big enterprise products in things like backup and archiving, endpoint systems management, and things like that. And they have lots and lots of customers who want to write scripts and things like that that help with a bunch of those kinds of things. So they built a really terrific site in I think 2008 or 9 was when they first launched it. They just relaunched it with Connect 2 last October. And they've got about 200,000 community members, all of them generating content. And you can see that they've divided up into groups around their various forums and blogs and downloads and all that kind of stuff. We also saw the UK government has a really great site that's kind of around open government. They've got not only kind of corporate or organizational out content where they're providing data about what they're doing inside the UK government, but they also have kind of ideation stuff where you can go and post ideas about how the UK might do its business better. You can then use 5-star and provide voting on that, as well as feedback and comments. There are tons more sites we could look at, but all of them had the same characteristics of they built it the way you build all Drupal sites. You start from core and you add modules and you get a done site. And so they had to build from Drupal subassemblies. And the problem was that most of the people who want to build a community don't always want to build from subassemblies. Building a community site doesn't mean I really want to understand all that it takes to have a community. There are really good examples of how good communities already exist. What they want is a community thing that's almost done, and they want to adjust. And using the car metaphor, they want to change the paint color, decide whether they want automatic or manual transmissions and air conditioning or not. Or in other words, do they want wikis or not? Do they want blogs or not? Those kinds of things. But the choices are already there. So what we did was said, okay, let's look at all these sites that we had seen, both with Drupal and frankly, outside of the Drupal area as well, and look at all the capabilities that people want to have. And frankly, even look at things like research from places like Forrester Research, because Melissa Parrish, I think it is, published something around community sites, and there's kind of the minimum feature set, she said, was required by any credible product. And so take a look at all those, and then put those together into one distribution. Let's pre-assemble that into one place so that it's easy for people to consume, and yet still leave stuff around the edges where people can customize. And this was an important design characteristic for us. One of the things we thought of up front was, is Open Atrium what we would like to riff on and extend on that? And one of the things that we had was Open Atrium had a very strict information architecture, a very strict construction model. It was very difficult for us to make it do other stuff. We actually talked to a bunch of other Drupal shops, and all of whom love Open Atrium. We actually love it. We'll commercially support it if you want to pay us to help you with it. But it was just too strict in its assumptions around what it wanted to do. So we tried to leave Drupal Commons with a design and architecture that left more flexibility around what you might want to do around the edges. So essentially, where can you go get it? First, you can go get, just play with it at commons.acquia.com. We actually run the Drupal Commons community on Drupal Commons. Why not? It makes sense. And so it gives you an exposure to what the end user experience is if you simply go to commons.acquia.com. If you want to download it and play with it yourself so you can take a look at some of the back-end stuff that we've done, you can go to acquia.com/DrupalCommons and get it. By the way, why don't you get it at Drupal.org? Because as a distribution, we've gone a little further than just putting Drupal stuff only in. We include the CK editor, and CK editor is an external project. Drupal.org can't build projects now that have external libraries, and until Drupal.org can, we can't actually put it at Drupal.org and have Drupal.org build it. So there is a Commons project at Drupal.org. If you go to /project/Commons, you'll find it, or Drupal Commons, I forget which. I think it's just /Commons. And you'll find it there, but it frankly just links back to Acquia. There's also another hidden URL that you'll find. It's actually a little link under the download the code button that's at that page that says older releases and beta releases. We are currently in beta of 1.3, which has a fancy new theme and some things like that. So you'll find the link to the older and dev releases under the main download but the big buttons for the kind of production release. So enough talk. Let me kind of show you the demo here, show you what it looks like up front. Oops, I don't know, RSS page. So this is what it looks like. This is, by the way, running the beta of 1.3. It mostly starts off with a homepage that says, what's some static kind of content at the top, and the stuff you see at the top right there is slightly different than what you get in the distribution. The distribution has some other instructions about how you might get started with Drupal Commons on your site. This is kind of more marketing stuff, but it's just a panel. So it's just content in a panel. Go in and edit the panel. You'll notice that if you're admin, you'll see the little edit panel tab. You can go in and edit the content of that panel to change it, or just nuke that particular panel block if you'd like to. Then we've got some other stuff on the homepage, like just what are these featured groups? We use organic groups inside, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, but we also added a field called featured. And so if you mark featured, that will bring it up into various places, including this homepage, and this will list the featured groups in descending order by, I think, number of members, something like that. And that's, by the way, just a view. And then we have some things like featured content, active groups. And in Drupal Commons, we thought as a metaphor, what's kind of the IA metaphor that we want to design our information architecture around? So we decided mostly groups is a pretty good place to start. So we have at commons.aqua, we have the most active group is called the Commons Q&A group, and this is a group homepage. It's typical organic groups homepage. What we've done here is laid out kind of some typical blocks that you'll want to see. Things like, what's the most recent group content created by who, and with little icons indicating the various types of content and the avatars of the people and that kind of thing. A little block in the upper left-hand corner maybe describing what the group is, and a little image that you can upload to kind of give a custom look and feel to that group. That image also shows up in various other views that show the groups listed in a view of some kind. Things like recent members, upcoming group events. There's a module called the shout box, which you may have seen before in Open Atrium. It's kind of a Twitter-like thing. I don't know why the guy's got a busted icon. A couple of people have busted user icons. I'm not sure why. But nonetheless, it's kind of a quick hit type thing. Not everything needs to be a discussion or a blog entry. There can be one sentence discussions to the rest of the community. So or the rest of that group. So you say, hey, cool, and it posts. And by the way, this posts and updates for everybody that's on that page every 30 seconds. So it will just refresh the page on the other guys if necessary. Let me nuke that real quick. Delete that. Confirm. And there's some other blocks, but this is all laid out with panels. And if you know anything about panels, you know that you can go in and just effectively change this layout. So we have group tag clouds and other things like that within the group homepage. So that's kind of how we take a thing. We also have created, in addition to the kind of block layout, we've got some tabs across the top, which are effectively content types that are defined for this particular group. So we have defined kind of 5 or 6 basic content types inside of Drupal Commons. Blogs, which are just typical Drupal blog posts. Documents, which are really a page with an attachment. So if you look, for example, at the listing of the view of the documents that are on this particular page, you'll notice that it has kind of a typical who authored it, what's the name of the name of the page, but then it's got the attachments that are there. And so a document page is really a container for an attachment. Discussions, which you're mostly familiar with, it'll be the typical threaded discussion where somebody then posts an initial topic, and then there's a set of indented or threaded stuff that goes along with it. And of course, you have the ability to turn on or turn off this the thing that's currently turned off here, which is how do I want to display these? Do I want to sort them by date or show them by default, expanded or collapsed, those kinds of things. We turn it off by default because I think it's ugly. But nonetheless, you'll find another couple of things in here. You'll note that we've got all the users have their little avatar up there, and then we do use user badges and user points in here so that as people post content, they earn kind of points on the side, and their little thermometer of bars will continue to grow as they add additional content. Back on the other content types that we support, we have wikis. And what's the difference between a wiki page and the rest of them? In the first 3, blog, document, and discussion, only the original author of the page can edit the body of the page, whereas in a wiki, any member of the group can edit the body of the page. Now we have a very modest amount of wiki syntax turned on, so like double square brackets and things like that. We don't have all the various wiki syntax turned on. you can add those modules if you care to, but we kept it lean for the initial distribution. We have a basic calendar, and it really is all just about, is there some kind of a meetup that might be happening or other event that we might want to be noticing, and then a nice little JavaScript pop-up to show you a quick summary of the view, and then you can click through to the actual complete node view if you'd like. And that has views in both year, week, month, and day types. And we also have an RSS aggregator type thing, so if you want to go in and add some RSS feeds from either other groups on the site or other external sources, you can add RSS feeds here, so the administrator of the group can go in and say, let me add a particular RSS feed, and then you can take a look afterwards at what the feed list looks like. In this particular one, I'm pulling in all the tweets from about Acquia as well as Acquia.com's corporate blog feed, and that just shows up here on this page in a page view, and by the way, it shows up on all the pages in the group in a sidebar. So those are the kind of content things that we've set up by default inside of Commons to give people easy and automatic ways to kind of create content within their group. Another kind of major area is in interpersonal interaction. So if you look at either my account or others, you can see that there's a fairly extensive predefined profile, a bunch of different fields that show kind of what groups do I belong to, how long have I been a member of the site, a bunch of information about me, kind of my photo and what my current user points level is, my recent activity, who my friends are. Those kinds of things that are interesting to people so that you can use some of the social features to try to get people interested in each other. You can also, by the way, pull down the community tab and look at all the members of the community in a view that we have defined this way, so you can see people in a little more organized way. Almost all the pages that are views of one form or another have a filter of one kind, so all of our content pages, these member pages all have various kinds of filters that you could use to find people as well. And then as you drill into their individual accounts, you can see their profile. We have turned on contact pages so that people you can contact that person by dropping them a quick email. We're looking at more kind of direct in the system messaging and releases going forward, and because we're trying to figure out how do we rationalize all the different choices we have there for interpersonal messaging. People also, by the way, have the opportunity to make bookmarks. Looks like this person hasn't bookmarked anything, but all content types have a little link below the main body of the content that says bookmark this, and that'll allow you to store your own bookmark. And if you're a friend of somebody, you can see their bookmarks as well. So there's more stuff in the community. By the way, there's friending, and what does friending do for you? So you'll see that kind of everybody who joins the site asks to be my friend, and I only friend people if they actually contribute to the site a little bit. So if you try to friend me and you're not a contributor, don't be afraid. Don't be offended if I say no until you start to contribute. But there's also a dashboard available for all users. Every user has their own dashboard available on the system. And that dashboard has a bunch of blocks that are available of content as well. And this is actually customizable kind of in a typical iGoogle fashion. I can drag these blocks around and customize it as necessary for me. I can decide if I want some of these blocks opened or closed by default, if I want to get rid of it by default, or just get rid of it off the page. If I want to bring it back, I go toggle items and go find that. Let's see, where was new users again here? Somewhere's new users. Every registered user has a dashboard, and then every registered user's dashboard, is customizable by them. Let's see, new. Who's new? There we are. So watch that left-hand column. If I click there, it'll show back up again. And then once I'm happy with it, I say Save Settings, and that way when I come back to this page, it's laid out this way. I can, if I want to go back to defaults, I have the ability to do that. So every user has their own dashboard. This is using, by the way, the Homebox module. I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. And then finally, we've done something for community, users. When I friend somebody, their recent content will start to show up in my recent content thing here. So this will show either, I'm sorry, not the recent content, recent activity. Where's the recent activity? Did I close that off? Sometimes when I give demos too fast, I turn off things I might want to see. Recent activity, right there. So recent activity shows up somewhere now, and wherever it is, there. This is all the activity of the people I friended. So I can kind of keep up with who's doing what, that's amongst my friends and that type of thing. And there will be more that we'll be doing with with friending as we go forward. Finally, the last area of concentration is if you're a site owner and you want to kind of have some insight into what's going on with your site, we have this little bit of site analytics. Now, we actually think that people should use things like Google Analytics to do things like click path analysis and most popular pages and things like that. But there's things that Google's not going to show you, like how many new users joined in a given period of time, how much new content was created in a given period of time, because it doesn't have direct access to that data. So what we've done is gone off and used a new module we wrote called Quant to essentially make that easily customizable. So in about 10 lines of PHP, if there's something that you can go query in the database, you can go write your query, send that off to Google Charts API, and then have it show up on this particular page. And then you can set it up either for the fixed time frames that we have, or if you want to say, show me the last, since the 9th to today, the 22nd, just show me that same data, and it will shift the display to that particular interval. We've got a variety of things like user creation, content creation by type, how many user points were earned, that kind of thing. So just a general bunch of stuff. Yeah. I'm sorry? This is a Drupal 6 site. What version of what? This is version 1.3. Yeah. This was available in the first release, though. It's available from the beginning. Yeah. Quant. Q-U-A-N-T. And then there's also this little My Stuff drop down, something new in this particular release in the 1.3 beta that's out now that I was so sorely waiting for. We actually have this ability now where you can say, this is all the content I've not read. Well, some of this I just don't care about, so let me go in there and just check mark that, mark it as read. We thought about putting that right in your dashboard, but the UI got a little too complicated for us. We put it in a separate drop down here, and you can use it here. And so there's that. There's also my content and all content, those kinds of things. So more stuff to explore. You'll note, by the way, that nowhere in any of this that you've seen have I got under admin. What we've done is tried to take all the things that you might normally do under /admin and bring them out and surface that user interface somewhere so that it's really, you never have to get under the admin menu unless you really are an administrator. So for example, if you want to go in and create a new role and have that role have certain permissions, then you got to do that under /admin. But when it comes to operating a community site, you should never have to go under /admin unless you're going to do Drupal-ish kind of things. We do have one interesting little bit here in the roles. We did create two unique roles inside the system that do have slightly unusual permissions. One is called a site admin, and the other one is called the community manager. This user switcher is just a plain old Drupal user switcher for dev purposes that we just installed locally on this site. And then leave content manager out. It's a historical role that we originally had in there for a purpose that no longer exists, but we didn't want to nuke it. What do the community manager and site admin do? Well, first of all, site admin is basically just the same thing as admin or as user one. It gives you all the permissions, but it keeps you from actually having to hand out the admin one permission password to everybody and still give them the permission, or start to take away selective things if you want. So it's just a proxy for user one. The community manager is the more interesting one because in the community, for example, if I'm looking at all the groups that are here, if there's a particular group that I find interesting and I want to say, hey, look, I want to highlight this particular group and raise it up in visibility, I have the ability as a person that has that role to mark a group as featured. And I also mentioned the featured content that you could have, or maybe I didn't mention, any given item of content can also be featured or not. And that shows up in a couple places. We basically have some views, some block views defined for it. It shows up, for example, on your dashboard. There's a block for featured content or featured posts. So any content type that's marked featured will show up in this featured item or featured posts here. There's also a featured groups one over here as well. And then also on that home page, the three groups that are in the center here are three that are marked featured as well. So that only the community manager gets to mark things as featured or not. So that's just kind of if you have somebody whose job it is to kind of pick things up out of the community and surface them, then that's a role we've created with some extra little capability. So let's look a little bit under the covers for a couple of minutes here. First of all, how's it packaged? It's packaged as a Drupal install profile. In fact, I think if I'm still, oops, wait a minute. I'll give you a quick look at what it looks like when you're installing it. So if I use Aqua Damp installer here, and I say I'm going to go import a site, and I happen to have a download of Drupal Commons 1.3.1 right there. So let's say select that. I want a new database, and we'll call this DC13, and we'll call it DC13 as a subdomain. Let it go off and create the site real quick, and then give me the install profile. I can say install Drupal Commons. So it's going to go off and do a few things, think a moment, and while that's thinking, we've done a couple of things inside of this to try to make it very flexible. We've done all the stuff we can for internationalization. So that particular part, even the install profile, is all now set up for language translation and things like that. So we want as many people who can translate as possible. If you happen to be a foreign language speaker, get in and jump in and help us with that. Now let's call it DC13. Does anybody else hate the PHP time zone names as much as I do? It's just terrible. So one of the things we've done is, you'll see we've packaged most of the kind of major functional areas inside of Drupal Commons into features. And so what we've actually done is during the install, we let you pick the features that you want. So if your particular community is not going to do kind of intranet stuff, and you don't care about documents or the things with attachments, you can turn off documents. If you don't want to have wikis, you just want to have discussions and blogs, you can turn that off. If you're not going to do polls or events, you can turn those on or off as is appropriate. So those are the content types. You also have other functions. If you don't think you want to have people have to have a dashboard, or if you don't want the notifications module running because you think you don't have email things that you want to do, you can turn those on or off as desired. Pick your list and then say continue, and it will go off and configure all that stuff. This is where we set up all the content types, set up all the associated views, and do that kind of thing. So that's how it's packaged. The important point here is that it is a fresh install. You can't just take those features, download them, and plop the features onto an existing Drupal site and say, voila, I want to convert it to a common site. At the moment, we don't know of an easy way to convert an existing site to a common site. There's a lot of complexity, mostly around the notion of those tabs across the top of the group homepage are views of content types. Or if you have other content types, they're going to show up as tabs, and it may not be appropriate, and all those kinds of things. So we're going to try to think about how you get to the point where you can have, add Drupal Commons to an existing site. But right now, if you want to take Drupal Commons stuff and make it work inside your site, then frankly, the best way to do it is to install Drupal Commons fresh, and start to pull over bits from your site. Take up your site, or take parts of your site, package it up into features, pull those features over into the Commons site, and start to move your content as best you can. By the way, try it out using Aqua Damp. You saw how I was doing all that stuff. If you want an easy way to do those kinds of things, then we think Aqua Damp's a great way to do it. And now this should just be about done. Well, I'm not sure there's anything more to see. Actually, this is an old slide. Now, it doesn't have just two features. It has like all those features that you saw. We used our partner, Top Notch Themes, to build the theme for Commons, and they built that on their base theme called Fusion. Fusion uses Skinner for some basic, simple things like you want rounded corners and some of the things like that that you can do with Fusion. More interestingly, you can actually retheme this pretty easily just by changing and making your changes in the local.css file that lives inside of the Fusion theme. In fact, if you go look at another site called interact.gsa.gov, this is a Drupal Commons site run by the U.S. General Services Administration. This entire version of the theme was all done just in local CSS. There was no retheming, no sub-theming. It's all just changes to local CSS. So you can do quite a bit with that. You don't need to necessarily go off and create something new. Let's see. So this is a Drupal 6 build. We hope to get the Drupal 7 pretty quick, but there's about 100 modules in this, and there are about 30 of them that don't have a D7 a version available yet, or if it is a D7 version, it's way too unstable. My guess is probably second half of 2011 is when we'll see this, and my guess is we're going to have to invest a bunch of time to get some of those modules up to D7, just because the module maintainers aren't very active on some of them. Just for those who care, this is not built on Acquia Drupal. There was some, just mostly for internal reasons inside of Acquia, their rhythm around releases is different from our rhythm around releases, and we didn't want to get too locked together. But it uses all the exact same modules that Drupal, that Acquia Drupal has and more. We just aren't using the official packaging of Acquia Drupal. By the way, it does include the Acquia Network connector. I didn't point that out during all the list of features, but if you want to try out the Acquia Network and use Solar Search, and by the way, I didn't show you the Solar Search capabilities, so if I go back to our site and say, for example, I18N, and go look for the internationalization stuff that might be on the site, you'll notice over here we've got a whole bunch of faceted tags, so sort by either relevancy or title or date, and then filter by either taxonomy tags that are there. By the way, every content type you can do free tagging. You can filter by date or filter by modification date or by group or by type or all those kinds of different filter tags. And of course, also you get spell correction suggestions if necessary. And then one other feature of the Acquia search is that you get things like content recommendations down in the lower right-hand corner, more like this or recommended related content. So you get that with an Acquia subscription. You also get free trials to Mollum and other spam protection or the spam protection service and things like that. So there's a connector in there that you can turn on to get a free trial. And it's all very point-and-click wizardy to help you get a free trial. So kind of information architecture, I think I've shown you the kind of 4 key areas: content and collaboration, people and relationships, personalizing the user experience in various ways, and then analytics. What did we do to build that? So just a kind of quick look underneath the covers, what modules were involved. So for the content creation stuff, we did organic groups, lots and lots of content types and views, a bunch of image cache presets so that you can get your, group graphics in the right place and all the avatars all in the right place. Shoutbox on the side, Tagadelic for free tagging, WYSIWYG and better formats. We actually took that out of 1.3. We'll probably take it out going forward. We originally used better formats and better formats for, we'll leave WYSIWYG in, but we used better formats to give the site or the community manager a default input format of full HTML, which seemed like a good idea in the first release. And then we realized when the community manager goes and creates a wiki page, it automatically gets created in full HTML input format. They save it, and the people who aren't community managers come along and try to edit that. We got an input format conflict. They can't save it in that same format anymore. So we took that out. Better formats, the module is still in 1.3. We'll probably leave it in the distribution, but we'll turn it off. We use some of the stuff from Drupal Wiki and then free linking. We provided content types that you see here: group, blog, document, discussion, wiki, notice, event, and polls. And then we set up all the image cache presets. We don't have a lightbox built in. There's no kind of media, nice little lightbox type thingy. It's so much better to do in Drupal 7. We decided not to waste too much effort on it in Drupal 6 and just try to push that effort towards Drupal 7 and then use what we've got in Drupal Gardens and places like that for that. There are some input format clashes that existed in 1.1 and 1.2, which are the ones I'm talking about with the better formats thing. Those go away in 1.3. And then the tagging UI is what we got from Drupal Wiki. Let's see, people and relationships. So we used user profiles, user relationships, Heartbeat, which is the activity module, or the recent activity that you saw, and then user points. Some implementation notes. We just used core profiles plus some additional fields, no real advanced profile stuff. And then this actually, no user badges is changing in 1.3 beta. The reason these slides are out of date is we just released 1.3 beta a week ago and I haven't updated the slides. One note, I'm not all that happy right now with the having separate blocks for recent content and recent activity. I think Facebook has spoiled us because we see that stuff is kind of interleaved now in Facebook. You see people saying things, and you also see kind of liked actions, and which are more like activities that are interleaved. And we're going to take a look at in the next quarter or so, how do we maybe rethink that user interface to see if there's a better way to present all that data. We're working with a partner out of the UK called Bright Lemon that's done a lot of community sites, and they're working with us to see if we can rationalize this and make it a little bit more sane. So that may change going forward, but right now that's what we're using. Personalization and page layouts. So what we actually did was, panels is used on most pages, but we actually did this combination of context and panels. Who's played with context? Who builds, first of all, who builds sites? And then leave your hand up Take your hand down if you have not used context. Okay, so context is kind of like, I'll actually just show you because I've got a little time here. I'm running fast pace here. I typically talk too fast. So context is kind of fun. I hadn't used it, frankly, before we started to do Commons. It's kind of a replacement for, it's replacement for the blocks administration for sure. It's even potentially a full alternative to panels. What we do is this. We say, let me take a look at, let's see, maybe the group. Where do I want to look? Let's see if a good example here. Let's take a look at this. So, if a page that's being displayed is has a content type of group, then what do we want to have happen? Well, we want certain blocks to appear. And the blocks that are going to appear are in sidebar last, we're going to put group actions, group search, group members, and group content tag cloud. And we could also decide that we want to put any of these other groups over here. We select it, and then we say add it to that particular area or something like this. What this is essentially doing is allowing us to say, based on some condition, like is the node type or the path or the user role or something else, whatever it may be, based on that condition, we then want to have some kind of reaction. Either have a block of some kind or a breadcrumb of some kind or a menu of some kind, those type of things. So it's beginning to give Drupal a very nice way to conditionally decide what should be on a page at kind of a configuration level. So we use this, for example, to set up the sidebar last region of the group homepage. So if I go to Commons and show you a group homepage, you'll see these blocks. The actions block, the upcoming group events, recent members, and things like that. Then we also combined that with panels. So the left-hand side of this is now controlled by a panel. The very left column has the group node itself, the shout box, the calendar block, the recent content, and the recent group activity. So we kind of combined context and panels in a way that we thought was appropriate for the time. Now, to be honest with you, I think we need to pick one or the other over the long run. I'm becoming more and more attracted to context, but Earl Miles wants to make panels really win. So Earl is trying really hard to do whatever we need to make sure panels wins. So I'm not sure where we're going to go, but I'm increasingly liking context. There's a bunch of things context doesn't do yet. And so the question is, can we do all that we need to do with context? But at the moment, we're using kind of context and panels to build pages to accomplish what we need. And we'll see which one wins the battle over the course of the next year or two. You can get subscriptions. So as you create a page, by default, if you've installed and enabled the notifications module or the notifications feature, you'll automatically be subscribed to email updates for all the comments on the content page that you created. Same thing happens when you make your first comment. You'll automatically be subscribed. Of course, in both cases, you have the ability to check the checkbox to say you don't want updates via email. And then you can also manage all your subscriptions on your subscription page tab in your profile. And I forgot how we did bookmarks and breadcrumbs when I was making these slides. I still haven't updated it, so I need to fix that. Let's see, implementation notes. We did do, I showed you how we did panels for various things. Dashboard is no longer done with panels. Now again, I forgot to update these slides, my apologies. Dashboard is now done with the Homebox module, which is that drag and drop bit that you saw. We looked at a bunch of different things for the drag and drop, and I'm still not sure that that's the best long-term solution for us. We looked at boxes from DevSeed. We looked at the panels in place editor and a bunch of different things. And frankly, Homebox is what is right now used on your own dashboard page at D.O. So it's kind of why we picked it. We also, the guy who's our chief engineer here at the lead engineer on the Commons project is the maintainer for Homebox, which is a good reason that we might adopt it. If you change panel layouts, just be aware if you do go in and change the way things are, you got to go figure that out when it comes time to upgrade to the next release of Commons, because we're going to be, paying attention to whether or not you've changed that. We use features, so the feature will show as overridden if you've done something, but just be aware changing panel layouts is something you'll have to deal with when you do your upgrades. Finally, for community management and analytics, the analytics stuff I talked about, the quant module is the thing that actually goes off and does the querying, and the charting module is what we use to send it to Google Charts API and get back the little graphs. We include the Google Analytics module, but we don't enable it by default because we're not sure everybody wants to have that on their site. And then also we did that featured content field. Then I told you about the Alchemy Network Connector already, so I can move on. So one of the key things to remember here is that one of our design goals was to try to keep this as Drupal as possible, not add a lot of stuff that you may not be familiar with. I mean, the furthest we've gone is context and features. We're wrestling really hard with trying to maintain that. It's one of the key design goals for the distribution. One of the things that's our biggest, most requested feature is the ability to have the home page for a group look different from group to group to group. Right now, they're all the same because they're all the same panel layout. There's a bunch of things that have got to get done in order to allow that, given the way that we're building the pages with the content types across the top being a view and things like that. What would really be nice is to use spaces, because spaces from DevSeed does a lot of the work for that. But spaces is just so hard to get your head around. I mean, we've spent a lot of time with it, and it still bends your mind a lot. And there's a lot of pushback inside of various people we've talked to around, would spaces be the right solution for us to add new kind of capabilities? It's something that DevSeed wrote to do for Open Atrium and how they can give you kind of per group customizability inside of OA. We're pushing really hard to try to figure out a way to do this stuff and not use spaces at the moment, because it's just, we're convinced it's too mind-bending. And so all that going to the point that our goal with Commons is to try to keep it as within the normal bounds of non-expert Drupalists as possible. So it is as accessible as it can be to a wide range of Drupal site builders. Other general goodness that we put in, you can see here, admin menu, CTools is in for lots of reasons, mostly to support features. Date time calendar, we include Devel even though it's not turned on by default. I'm sorry, that's an internal note to myself. Are we using flags for bookmarks? I don't think we are, but flags is included. Messaging, notifications, password policy we included. We actually shot ourselves in the foot a little bit there. The first release of Drupal Commons 1.0.1.1 and 1.2 all started off with the presumption that intranets was kind of the most interesting use of these. And so we turned on two things. One was it's a forced login to get into the site. You can't even see the site unless you log in, create an account. And two is we had a very strict password policy, thinking that corporations would want to have a very strict password policy. Turns out that the vast majority of interest in Commons has been for externally facing communities, and the first thing people wanted to do is to turn those off. So we actually flipped it in 1.3 so that it actually today in 1.3, it starts off by default as not forcing a login and having no password policy turned on, though we do leave the password policy modules around. Another goodness that you can see here, and what didn't we get to? Well, a bunch of things we didn't get to almost by intent, and other things we didn't get to just because of times. First, projects. A lot of people say, I'd like a project and task and kind of, milestone-based thing in there. And I think we've kind of internally said that we aren't going to spend any time inside of Acquia developing that. I think mostly because we see the principal energy and adoption inside of Commons has been for externally facing communities. And that's not a big thing in external communities. It's present, but not a huge requirement. I would love it if somebody came up with a feature that you could plop into Commons that would work just great. And I encourage anybody who wants to do that to do it, because we'll be happy to add it into the distribution and even give you a checkbox to turn on and off there. But I don't think we're going to spend any time on ourselves. But there are some group enhancements that we know are very high on the priority list. Subgroups. I kind of hate the idea of subgroups because it gets complicated. There's all kinds of, once you start to look at it, there's all kinds of hairy little questions. We're actually working on that now. Yes?
What are they? Because I thought organic subgroups would be really,
OG subgroups is right about the module OG subgroups. We just decided we're not going to use. It's just too full of holes and it just works weird. So there's a couple things. First of all, Subgroups imply a couple things. One is, how do I manage who's in the group? Is it a set of access control? Is it a set of inherited rules? Or is it simple normal group membership or non-membership? So when you're creating the group, do you want to specify some members of the existing group that want to be in the subgroup or not? Do you want to just create the subgroup with no members and people have to go join it? If you do want to have members coming down from the subgroup and have it actually be the same membership, do you want to maintain that membership as people change their group affiliation at the upper level or not? In other words, are you actually doing a dynamic inheritance or are you doing it static once? The access control just gets more and more complicated. I mean, I can go on 5, 10 more things like that. Second is content. When I create a subgroup, am I actually splitting the parent group or am I just creating a subgroup? There's actually maybe 2 different use cases, but in the most common use case we're hearing is, well, I've got a group, but it's gotten too big and there's too many things in it now. So what we really want to do is to split this group into a parent group and a subgroup. I've got a product group and it's got marketing and development and support information in it. And I want to split those in so that I have a marketing group and a development group and a support group, but there's still a general group at the top that is a container for lots of things. And so I want to have some way to split that content down. Well, when you do that, do you still want to be visible at the top? Do you want some kind of roll-up of content when you're at the top level group or not? Or are you only seeing content that exists at that group, or are you seeing all the content from the children as well? Yeah. Sure, sure. Yep.
Now, I don't really care whether the people who don't like Pekingese can get in my group or not, but I do want to have that separate group dashboard that cat group people who are interested in Pekingese can see.
Yep.
So if I just use it as a sort of, content thing, not a sort of access permissions and control thing.
Yep.
Is there a way to do it without organic subgroups?
So the question he's asking, the point he's making is there's several use cases for subgroups. One is it's literally just a taxonomy subgroup. In other words, it's an instance, a more specific instance of something at a parent. And it's really run completely independently. It has no relationship other than the fact that it's categorically filed with the parent group. That's one use case. There is another use case where there's actually inheritance involved in the two. And I don't think I want to solve just one or the other. I think we as we're building the distribution, we have to solve them both. I, by the way, think the problem with OG subgroups isn't necessarily just whether it solves all the problems, that it's really buggy. And also the guy who's the maintainer doesn't really want to spend any more time at it. So I think what we're going to end up doing is looking what Amataibu, the new OG maintainer, is doing for D7, and effectively probably backporting it to D6. And what it does, I think, is it actually allows a group node type to be something that's permissible as a node type within a group. Today, that isn't the case. Once you do that, lots of other things can happen, but I think that's the direction we're heading. So subgroups is one. Per group custom homepage layout's another, and this is an area I talked about just a minute ago when I was talking about spaces. Spaces is something that could help with this, but I think we're trying hard to figure out a way to do another way. But giving people the ability to say, these are the blocks that I want, and this is the layout I want for them, this is the color scheme I want for it, that kind of thing on a per group basis. And then also per group content type selection. Not all, well, we have the feature right now where you can turn on or off content types for your community as you're installing it. And by the way, even if you turn them off while you're installing it, you can go back later on, just turn the feature on, it will enable that content type. But that works site-wide. Right now, you may actually also want different content types available per group. And that's also a problem that Spaces would solve, but we're trying to find a way to solve without it. So per group content type selection is also something we'll do. Those are probably the highest priority things amongst all the things that we hear across the entire community. Second of all, Homebox, actually that's done. Third is more sophisticated document management. And I'm waffling on this. There's actually a couple of the enterprise content management open source companies, Nuxio and Alfresco, would really like to partner in some way to get their stuff to work. There's also an outfit that's built some actual, a little more sophisticated document management stuff directly into Drupal with a module, and I forget their name. And they all want to do this, but as I've gone along in the 2 months since we've done this, I did these slides, I'm just seeing, again, more and more emphasis on the external community and less on kind of intranet style stuff. So whether or not we spend any time here may just depend on what kind of the community interest is in intranet kind of activities. Community tagging. Right now, the node author can tag any way he wants, but nobody else can tag. And then really there's no kind of easy, nifty way for doing some of this kind of social bookmarking that we'd like to see. And then there's a zillion other things. A lot of people want to do videos. I think the email notifications, there's one big glaring hole just because the notifications module doesn't do it. And that is, if I sign up for a group, I want to see all new notifications of all new content posted to the group. That's obvious. Well, right now, the only notifications you get are follow-ups to either your original post or to nodes where you've commented. So more notification options and maybe even just sanitizing the entire notification stuff. There's a popular content block that we've implemented right now. It uses core to do it. And what core does is it goes off and it looks at this stuff every cron run, and it's pretty expensive, and I'm a little worried about its scalability. So we can turn that on, but I'm a little bit worried about whether that's the right solution. Some kind of private messaging, and maybe coupled with thinking about a Facebook-y kind of approach. One of the things that we've talked about with Bright Lemon is, should we take the profile page and make it more like a Facebook wall? Kind of like Yammer does, and those kind of guys where you have a conversation within you and your friends on that wall. And should we take the shout box itself, or should the shout box maybe replace the recent content block in the center of a group and make it be more Facebook-y, so that you have these kind of more threaded-like things happening, and then content lives over in the side somehow. I'm not sure yet, but we'll work on that. And by the way, we do have people in the community who are working on stuff as well. So go community. This is all. What's our roadmap here? Our roadmap is community-driven at some level. We're following where people are using Commons and doing the things that we think will work in that most popular area, and also whatever the community wants to give to us in terms of bring it back. We, until recently, were mostly just taking patches on D.O. This week, we put up a GitHub repository for Drupal Commons, so people can start to contribute via Git if you'd like. Just go to github.com/Acquia, and you'll find all of our projects there, and Drupal Commons is one of them. So you can go join the community conversation at the community site. And we actually have this kind of tricky bit where there's an awful lot of discussion that wants to take place that isn't kind of coding level discussion, it's kind of more idea and policy level discussion. So we encourage that to happen at commons.acquia. But we want bug posts at Drupal.org, please, in the issue queue. If it's a real bug post, put it there. If it's a help question, if it's a policy, if it's an idea, if it's a discussion about how something should work, do that on Commons. Don't clutter the issue queue. Keep the issue queue with issues, and then go from there. Let's see. So by the way, that's all free. Everything that we've talked about today is all completely open source. We're not playing any games. It's just download it. Just in case you want to know how Acquia wants to make money on this, we'll essentially provide it as a managed service. So if you're an organization or an enterprise and you want to essentially just operate the community, you can come to us and we'll give you our hosting, a subscription for our support, and our remote administration stuff, kind of as a complete platform as a service. It remains fully customizable, so we don't call it SaaS in a sense, because Salesforce and guys like that do something where you're essentially using their application only the way they provide it to you. Yeah, and you might be able to customize it the way you can customize views in Drupal through the point-and-click UI, but it still only does what they let you do. In contrast to that, if you use our services, you can upload modules, you can change the theme, you can do anything you want to the site, and we'll still operate all the infrastructure and support you as a complete, almost SaaS-like platform. And we can do that either for you in the cloud, or if you'd like to get rid of the hosting part, just do everything on premises inside your organization. We're happy to help you there as well. And we also do things for people that we don't really want to do lots of professional services around this. We do have partners, and I think you probably know as an organization, we try to be very partner-friendly and let partners do site development. But we do have kind of a one-week quick stand-up. So what we do is we'll charge people a flat fee, and we'll give them kind of 24 hours of theming time, a day or two of customization, and a day or two of kind of familiarization and training if necessary to kind of get up and running. And it's not really a big professional services job. It's kind of just going in and fixing the Chrome and the skin on the theme and helping them get up and running. And then we'll do that for a flat fee. But beyond that, we push it all off to partners. And that's kind of it. So we hope this can really do some great things around giving, we like the name community-powered innovation because it's really, it's innovation from the Drupal community. So it's built by the Drupal community, so the innovation comes from there, as well as it can be a place for your community to innovate in your particular area of interest, whatever it may be. So that's it. Questions? Right here first. Not enough deployments yet to really see that, I think, is a real trend. Almost everybody that I see so far with sample sites and people I've been exchanging email with kind of do it all. So I haven't seen any real patterns. No, the only thing that we actually didn't have any way to track what was out there at all until this beta release 1.3 because we couldn't think of a way to do it. So what we actually did in 1.3 is we included a module called Commons version or Commons release. I forget which one it is. And it actually has no code. Its only function in life is to report back to D.O for updates, the way that normal D.O update check works and that kind of thing. So if you say I want to communicate back to D.O and turn that feature on during your install, then it will use Drupal or Commons release to go do that. And even that, I think we've only got our alpha and beta testers reporting back now. It's a couple dozen sites. I'm sure we've had. I think we've had over 20. We're in the tens of thousands, low tens of thousands of downloads of Commons in terms of our download counters. But the number of sites that are reporting back is trivial. So mostly what I know about is whether people have contacted us or emailed me or said something on the community, that kind of thing. So we have a crawl that crawls the web, and we're starting to see them show up, but I don't know anything yet. Yes? It has it doesn't do anything that's normal non-Drupalish. We don't do anything specific to support multi-site out of the box. So we're not doing domain access, but if you want to go make it do something like that, we're not hamstringing Drupal Commons in some way that will prevent you from doing the normal Drupal thing. No. And in fact, I just sat through Jesse's pitch upstairs on the way he's thinking about his new, is it 5, the theme he's building, or whatever he's calling his experiment, on how he kind of builds from the notion of mobile devices all the way up to things. And I would love to maybe think about in a few months re-implementing the Commons theme with that as our base. But right now it's it's whatever Fusion offers, and it's not particularly mobile friendly at the moment. No. Semantic Connect was an example of a site that we looked at as saying, these guys built this, what did they do? And so Kevin Millicam at, I forget the name of his company out in Salt Lake, is the one who built this, and they spent a lot of time and money thinking about this. I mean, lots of time and money. And what I'm trying to do with Commons, frankly, is lower that burden. Because Semantic had to spend, I don't know what the number is, but I can imagine that being a $250,000 to $500,000 project. And it ought not to be, because they had to figure out all this stuff from the beginning. So if we can spend a couple of man years and figure all that stuff out and package it up, that reduces the rollout cost maybe from 500,000 down to 50 or 25 or something like that. I would say the ones that are in the pipeline right now that we know are being developed, we're actually doing some additional things that are the most exciting, but I'm also under non-disclosure, I can't tell you. Let me just say this. Watch Twitter and Acquia Tuesday. Yeah. No, we're still very immature right now on the idea of our privacy. Yeah, you can set off, or whether it's visible off or not. But yes.
You mentioned this tension between going to panel versus the
Context. Yeah.
So I'm both interested in rooting for context, and
Yeah.
also curious to know what use cases are that you can't do with context.
I'm not qualified to tell you. I'm the project. Consider me the product manager / business manager of this, and I'm a guy who loves the technology, so I dig down into it whenever possible. But and so I know how every panel is constructed, and know how every context is constructed, and all that kind of stuff. But then start to ask me the technical whys of why Mike chose to do one or the other. I can't tell you. Yes, and by the way, go to commons.acquia.com and join in the community conversation about it, please, because you can influence this. Yes.
Maybe it's my simple interpretation, but when you're thinking about subgroups, is it just a two-tier single hierarchy?
Well, so
Because I could see in a complex organization it would be n-tier and potentially even multiple hierarchies.
So the way I see it is that you have a group, and you're going to end up, having multiple levels of groups because it just will be. There's no two ways about it. And so at the end of the day, it really comes down to think about if are you a Windows user or a Mac user? So have you done things in Windows sharing where when you created a folder, you've had to figure out the access controls to that folder? It's the same problem, and Microsoft makes it really complicated. But frankly, it is a complicated problem.
There's actually a whole other set of dimensions to it. If you get into a large organization
Yeah.
where the bottom entities or nodes may want to belong to more than one hierarchy.
They may. Well, and then this, of course, relates back to I might actually want membership in these, be driven off of some other place that's there, and these might be actually trying to reflect an organizational hierarchy or driving that from Active Directory or something like that. I want to avoid that as much as possible. I'm trying really hard to keep this very simple at the beginning. The only things I want to solve are access control and content roll up. And the kind of fundamental ideas are, if you're a member of a subgroup, we'll probably automatically make you members of all the groups up the chain, but you're not automatically a member that way, which makes sense. So that group membership in Drupal implies access control. All right, so we'll probably just, if you're browsing around, you find this subgroup for, what was the subcats, the Pekingese cats. If you join the Pekingese cats group, you'll automatically be in the cats overall group, just because, and that way when you go up, you'll see content that's here. But we won't, so we'll do that aggregation for access control, but we won't do that for content. If you're looking at the recent content page or block in the cats group, you won't see the stuff for the Pekingese group. You'll have to actually jump down into the Pekingese group to see its content. This is why I want to keep this to not intranet uses. I love public-facing communities because they're much more simple, and we'll get dragged down the intranet route over the course of time because we have customers already that are deploying for the intranet. The Federal Reserve Bank is deploying Commons as intranet, and we're going to have to solve that problem. But for me, I'd rather solve this problem at the public level first, and then start to introduce the internal complexity later. I don't think this is going to have anything to do with layout. Panels versus context, for me, mostly is going to be around layout and breadcrumb and that kind of stuff. This is more about access control and content display. Yes? I love Open Atrium. We use it. We use it internally for some of our project management. It's a great project. It has a very strict model about what it thinks it's trying to do. And as long as what you want to do fits in that model, it's a beautiful application. It's well done. And frankly, kudos to DevSeed. They built some amazing technology to build that. I mean, context features, strong arm, spaces all flowed from Open Atrium. And we're using all of that except spaces. So God bless them. I love it. And we will actually, as an organization, we haven't got any paying customers that want to do it yet, but DevSeed's not in the business. DevSeed's not in the business of supporting Open Atrium officially. They just want to do implementations of stuff. But if you're like some big business and you want to, have kind of traditional Acquia support, we'll sell you a support agreement, a contract for Open Atrium. We love it enough. We like it. But it has its model. And if you want to break that model, woe be unto you. And before we made the decision to go out and do Drupal Commons, I talked to a dozen different mainstream Drupal shops and asked them, what are you doing with OA? How's it working for you? Go talk to Chapter 3, go talk to Palantir, go talk to all these guys. And I said, we love it, it's great. I got this problem. which is frankly, and the other reason is that we saw an opportunity or need for mostly more externally facing stuff. And the Open Atrium really can be used for external facing, but it's really very much more around projects and kind of, tasking around those kinds of things, as compared to Commons is being used by a car fan community in Germany, and they're all putting up pictures, almost like a bigger version of a forum, right? It's a more enhanced version of a typical BB site, but they're also bringing in UberCart because they're selling T-shirts and car parts and all that kind of stuff, and so that's not something that will fit into OA. So we saw an opportunity there for something that was more flexible, and I love it. It just doesn't solve our needs. More questions? Thank you for staying late until the last session.